All right. Okay. Well, hi everyone. Okay, I think it's time we start. We have enough people. All right. So hi everyone. Welcome to Figuring Out Body Figures. I hope y'all are doing great. My name is 𝗕𝗂 and I am the Vice President of 𝗕𝗵𝗃𝗃. Before we begin, let me just do a whole round of introductions, especially since we've just rebranded from Taylor's Girl Up to 𝗕𝗵𝗃𝗃. Okay, so 𝗕𝗵𝗃𝗃 is Taylor's inclusivity project, and we strive to empower individuals from all groups of minority and gender in Malaysia and around the world. So 𝗕𝗵𝗃𝗃 is actually a play on the combination of Malaysian and English gender neutral pronouns, which exemplifies our hope to build a community that is intersectional and inclusive for all. So our aim is actually to challenge discrimination and gender issues by creating the safe space that allows for meaningful discussions, education, raising awareness, all that good stuff. And ultimately, we strive to build a generation that stands hand in hand from all corners of the world against inequality. All right, so let me get into the introduction. So first we have our host. We have 𝗕𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 or 𝗕𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 or fondly known as 𝗕𝗵𝗃. She's the president of 𝗕𝗵𝗃𝗃 and is a second-year psychology student. She feels very strongly for causes of feminism and gender inequality, adversity surrounding marginalized communities, and fighting social injustices in this world. And of course, her world wouldn't be complete without her 4 little fur babies. They're very cute, by the way. And if you don't find her planning events, you can find her curled up watching rom-coms with a cup of Ribena or stressing over her assignments as she listens to very Sindhu music as a way to cope. Next, we have 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗃𝗃. 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗃𝗃 is a first-year Bachelor of Social Science student majoring in International Relations. Currently, she is 21 years of age and goes by the pronoun she, her. 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗃𝗃 has also obtained a diploma in communications in 2020. She has a deep passion for the arts, such as painting and graphic design. And she's fond of collecting magazines. So currently she holds the position of the design director of 𝗕𝗵𝗃𝗃. So those are our hosts for tonight. All right, now introduction of speakers. Okay, so first we have Mr. Dorian. Dorian Wilde is a human rights advocate working with other marginalized people to forward gender and sexual diversity and rights. He's the founder of Trans Men of Malaysia and a core member of Justice for Sisters. He's also the outreach, volunteerism, and advocacy executive at Taylor's Lakeside, doing societies and Taylor's, including 𝗕𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃. Next, we have Ratna. Ratna Devi is a Malaysian plus size model and fashion blogger that advocates for women's rights and fat positivity. She's the founder of 𝗙𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 Clothing and former co-owner of the 𝗕𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 cult. The Tamil activist is a digital creator that uses her social media platform to give a lending hand and spread awareness. Next, we have Dr. 𝗕𝗏. Dr. 𝗕𝗏 Sumaya is an anthropologist who is a senior lecturer at the Gender Studies program at University Malaya. She received her PhD from the National University of Singapore, an MA from Ohio University, a master's in research from University Malaya, and a BA from the University Malaya as well. She maintains a keen interest in underrepresented narratives of women, migrants, and Borneans living in the interiors. Next, we have 𝗕𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃. 𝗕𝗏𝗃𝗃 is a fat, loud, and proud intersectional feminist who believes everyone can make a difference in the fight for equality through empowerment. She's focused on eradicating violence against women and children, inculcating the practice of consent, and advocating for fat acceptance. She has worked with many different communities here in Malaysia and is changing minds one person at a time. She currently works with the women's rights movement in Malaysia and is involved in feminist movement building. Next, we have Priyam. Priyam currently works at Shopee in the marketing department. She advocates for anything related to fat positivity and mental health with the current aim of shedding the stereotype of fat people in the corporate role that despite being overweight, they are not passive nor ineffective at their job. This has been Priyam's current goals at the moment. And of course, we have 𝗲𝗏. 𝗲𝗏 is a fat positive advocate who aims to bring light to experiences of fat women in Malaysia. Her previous works include being one of the founding members of an NGO working on the issues of child rights and child sexual abuse. So working with children in marginalized communities, both in Kuala Lumpur and Johor, and also advocating for her alma mater to be fair trade accredited. Through her role as a Fulbright scholar and cultural ambassador, she utilized her position to spread the pride of her Malaysian heritage to the other side of the world. All right, so that's our speakers for today. Okay, before we start, just some ground rules and trigger warnings. We would like to put out the disclaimer that tonight's discussion may contain triggering and or sensitive material. As a topic of fat discrimination and experiences associated with it may be a sensitive topic. At any point during the conversation where you feel any unease or discomfort about the topics discussed, please feel free to leave the forum with minimum disruption. For all of us to have an amazing conversation today, there will be a few ground rules. So the first one is, in a situation where you have a differing opinion from one of our speakers or someone who is sharing, please avoid making personal attacks. Instead, direct your thoughts and feelings onto the problem. So the point of tonight's discussion is for us to learn and share our experiences and insights. So if you're attacking people, that's not going to work. The second one is, if you're free to unmute your microphones when you have something to share, but please try to refrain from interjecting when people are speaking. You can use the chat box down below on Zoom, you know how to use it, and to voice your opinions or ask questions. There's also Slido links that will be sent in the chat throughout the session where you can put up your questions, because we'll have a Q&A at the end. If you have any additional questions, feel free to type them out in the chat and we will be happy to help you out. Always remember to be mindful of your language as well when speaking to one another, to avoid hurting feelings and being disrespectful. And except for the speakers, please mute yourself until the end, or when you would like to ask a question, you can indicate in the chat box or raise your hand and we will get to you as soon as we can. And without further ado, figuring out body figures. 𝗕𝗲, I'm passing it on to you.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, 𝗕𝗲, for the amazing introductions of everybody, as well as the ground rules. So before we begin, I thought it would be really appropriate if we kind of like address the tea, or let's say the feedback and conversation that happened on the 𝗕𝗲 Instagram account. So if you all haven't seen that, you can definitely check us out at @𝗕𝗲.tu on Instagram. Slight plug, I understand. So the conversation, and I would say that happened was somebody felt that the title, since it had figuring out body figures, should be more of a body positivity conversation, or in particular, it should include people from like the skinny spectrum. And this person also had a lot of things to say about the fact that, like, with us having conversations surrounding fat positivity, what is fat positivity, fat acceptance, and things of that sort, we are kind of like discriminating or invalidating emotions of people from the skinny spectrum in a way, and the struggles they may be facing in their day-to-day life compared to people on the fat spectrum. And so just to kind of give a like preview of what we're going to be discussing today, as well as to kind of address the issue at hand, I think the reason the team essentially picked the title is because it's very vague, first off, and also it leaves a lot of room for interpretation. And the interpretation we are going to be discussing today is, as mentioned, fat positivity and fat acceptance. So I hope everybody's kind of aware of what we're going to be exploring. Aside from that, we're also going to be exploring like fat stigmatization and discrimination and barriers fat people face in Malaysia in particular, but also in general. Alrighty, so now we've got the tea out of the way. I'm going to start off with like the first like question, or the first thing we're going to be going off on. So over the years, I think the explosion of body positivity movement has been seen. I think it's become almost like super mainstream. And the general goal of body positivity is to kind of like, it strives to empower people to value and appreciate their bodies, which is amazing. We love that. But there's also like so many iterations of that. We see so many hashtags, and on the surface, it's like all about self-love and body acceptance. But I think through that, there's also a lot of limitations against different body sizes, shapes, colors, people's identity, and hence providing spaces for that to be invalidation of people and the experiences they may be facing. And I don't think that's any different for people within the fat spectrum as well. But I would like to ask Qirt in particular first, is there a fat spectrum? Are there like different lived experiences across that spectrum in particular?
Okay, so I think this is a great first question because it gives people context, right? And it helps, I guess, give language. So generally, we have what we call small fat, mid fat, large fat, super fat, and infinity fat. Okay. I speak for myself. I am okay with calling myself fat because it is a descriptor, right? I find the other terms just patronizing, for lack of a better word. Okay, we call people who fit into, I guess, the expected or standard body size, straight size, right? These terms are there just so that it's easier to talk about the issues that these different people in varying spectrums of fatness face, right? So a small fat would be someone who is able to go into a store, buy clothes, right? I mean, I'm not sure how familiar you all are with clothes sizing, but maybe a 1X, maybe a smaller 2X, right? Then we have mid-fats who probably still can go into the store and buy clothes, but you know, it's going to be a little tougher. So it's like maybe 2X, 3X, like that. Then you have your large fats. Then I guess I would be considered a large fat. It's difficult for me to buy clothes in store. I'm mostly sized out of physical stores. I have to buy everything online. And it's, you know, access is difficult, right? Then we have super fats who are definitely in store. You have to buy everything online. That's like 4X, maybe 5X. And then you have super fat, then you have infinity fats, who are people who have such difficulty finding clothes that fit them. They probably don't even know what their actual size is, because people, they can't buy from any retailer, right? Sometimes they have to make stuff custom made and things like that. Obviously, with the higher up the scale that you go, right, the spectrum that you go, the more sort of oppression and access issues that you face, right? I think everyone here at one point in their life has experienced fat shaming. Okay, you put on a little bit of weight, somebody will say something or the other, but the intensity in which it is very different, right? So people who are small fats do experience fat discrimination, but not as intensely as somebody who is a super fat or an infinity fat, or who goes, you know, who is on the other end of the spectrum. This is really important to remember, because people who are on the other end of the spectrum face intense discrimination and are excluded from public life, right? Because you cannot access spaces. Yeah, and that's really something really important to remember. Yeah, everyone in the spectrum faces discrimination. It's just the varying levels are different, right? Yeah, and as you go higher, the more systemic the discrimination becomes. Yeah, anyone want to add anything else? Another quick thing I wanted to add was, it's really important for us when we approach fat acceptance or fat advocacy. It's important to center the people who are on the end of the spectrum, right? Because if you can include everyone, literally the most marginalized person in the spectrum, you effectively include everyone, right? So that is the attitude in which we approach it. Yeah. Anyone else? Please feel free to jump in.
Okay, thank you for that. Fa, would you like to add?
Yeah, so I echo whatever that 𝗕𝗏 just said. And I would like to maybe give some examples of how maybe the larger fats, the super fats and infinity fats, are excluded in spaces. So you can see in healthcare and medical care, you need different, like, you know, handcuffs, for example, for to take blood pressure. The MRI machines usually do not fit people who are on the larger side. I have had this experience before, having to see 3 different doctors who have come up with no solutions for that. Mm-hmm. Clothing, obviously, like 𝗕𝗏 said, accommodating facilities, and these includes chairs in a lot of different spaces, chairs in restaurants, chairs in movie theaters, chairs in lecture halls, chairs in schools, all of these different spaces. Job searches obviously, like if you're on a larger fat, you're seen a certain way, and therefore like you are also discriminated. Education opportunities, media representation. You don't see larger fats on screen. Like, you know, you can still see size 16 or size 18 on screen, and being shed like maybe a positive light, but beyond that sizes, like you really don't see larger fats being portrayed. I mean, there are larger fats, but we are always portrayed like only a very shallow way of like portrayal. And so we don't really have any role models to look up to growing up. Airline company is like another big one. The chairs are impossibly small. Even in first class seatings, a lot of people can't fit into them. And some airline companies actually do not allow you to fly if you are a certain size. So that's very good. That's something that we can probably like keep in mind moving forward. And the reason why it's very important to distinguish these differences in sizes is because a lot of times when you talk about body positivity, when there's conversations about inclusivity, a lot of times these spaces are only given to small fats. And they have been speaking for and have been speaking over people who are larger. And that is obviously not a representation of all fat people's experiences. And when we're talking about inclusivity, obviously, like if you're excluding a big group of people, then that's not inclusion. And so, and this acceptance, this image of acceptance that we have in our head of like smaller fats, it's because of like the proximity that they have towards thinness. The closer you are to being thin, the more accepted you are. And this is like a fact that that all of us experience as a larger fat. So I guess, yeah, that's it from me for now.
Okay, thank you for that. Actually, I have a question. Like, I don't know if any of y'all have experienced this, but have you experienced like having the right personality, or having this like amazing like life-living personality, and that's the right way to be like a fat person or something? Has that happened to you before in a way?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just going to jump in here, and
ahead,
you know,
yeah.
can I just add, this chat is on fire. I like, yeah. But you know, more importantly, I think that question is, and before I return it to my very, very esteemed fellow panelists, is that I'm going to use my own personal experience for this. I've grown up fat, right? And this, of course, is made a lot difficult because I'm biracial. My mother is indigenous to Sabah, and you know, my father is of Indian descent. And there's always this sort of conversation, right, where it's like you kind of gotten it from your mother. Everybody in Borneo are like tiny. They're like Smurf sized, right? And so you must have gotten it from the Indians. Because you know, it's the most logical thing. And so when you hear these sort of like pseudo-scientific magic science bull caca come out of people's mouths, in a way you sort of internalize it, right? And so what you do, I think as a child, you start to tell yourself, well, I am struggling to lose weight because, you know, things like, I don't know, right, the kind of right food to eat and whatnot are such difficult conversations to have, because it's a kind of knowledge that actually is classist, right? And we'll get into that conversation later. But more importantly, what you start to do is you start to shrink your body and expand your personality. I'm going to be so lovable and so nice, and you know, absolutely, I'm just a ball of giggly joy all the time, and I'm going to try to shrink into places. I'm going to try to sort of manipulate the overall narrative so that you don't see my body, but you see my personality, and I'm going to be acceptable. I'm going to pretend that this half a bowl of wonton mee is doing it for me today, when in fact it isn't, because I'm going to need more nourishment for a larger body anyway. But you don't talk about these things. And, you know, these things get internalized. So to sort of answer you, Shiva, is there a right kind of personality for being fat? Sure, lovable, joyous, full of fun, can laugh at yourself, which by the way is a byproduct of actually being fat, right? I can laugh at myself. I can take the joke. Because that's what's expected of me. So the moment you become critical and angry or, just inquisitive, these are not fat-worthy personalities. Suddenly you're that fat bitch, my French, that fat bitch with a personality problem, because that's not fat friendly. And I think, these are conditions in which we sort of have to wrap our minds around. Why do you want to see your fat friend from childhood just absolutely bursting with personality? Now, of course, it's done me good, right? The years and years of practice has done me a lot of good in the sense that you're sort of surviving and navigating through the world. But it starts to become two-dimensional. And that's not what you want for anybody in this world. You want them to have all the dimensions that they deserve to have. And I think this is certainly one of those directions. I want to hand it over to my esteemed panelists before I make this into a podcast.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Vila. To kind of go off what you just said, like maybe I could direct this towards Mr. Dorian first. So what would you think is the reason society is more accepting of a certain type of fat person or size or personality? Like, why do you think that's a thing?
So in my opinion, I think that once you go past a certain threshold of body fat, then you are already opened up to fat shaming of all kinds, right? But certain fats, especially in-betweeners and small fats, you are still seen as salvageable. You just have to work harder. You just have to do more, But after a certain point, you're almost seen as can't do anything about you, lah. This is just how it's going to be. And it's not like people leave you alone. That's not how it works, right? But also I think society has got very, it is really like a standard that is so mind-boggling, right? Think about it, right? We have all kinds of diversity of sizes of body figures in the world. But why is it that only this particular window, this small, this really, really slim window, like pun not intended, but that is acceptable to society, and that makes you wonder, right? What is it? So yeah, I think that there definitely Ratna and Vila and Fa was saying, definitely people are treated differently. I am a smaller fat person. I do not get, I've been told that I need to go for bariatric surgery, which is, yeah. For those who don't know what that is basically, anybody want to explain bariatric surgery? I feel like I'm not that good at it. Like a bypassing of something. Yes, Ratna, go ahead.
I mean, in very layman's terms, I think it's stapling of the intestines where the food can only, only a certain amount of food can go through that part of your body. That's like the layman definition.
Yeah.
But they have made in very recent times, they have made, I think we've seen it, they have something like what's that thing that you use for your teeth? Braces, okay, like braces, but it's just for this part or something, like just to clip that part because it won't allow the food to come in or something like that. But it's the advancement of technology against fat people. Yeah, it's new. It was just like this year in the UK, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and to think, right, like even me, I've been told by doctors, no less, that I should go for something like bariatric surgery, right? Can you imagine what life must be like for people, you know, of much larger sizes than I am, who are much fatter than I am, right? And this is not my daily experience also. Like most of the time I just fly under the radar, I just look like a fat Indian uncle. But but you know, a lot of people, especially younger people, the kind of pressure, right, that you get to fit a certain you know, body size is intense. And also, like, not to mention, like, growing up, I developed an eating disorder because I was consistently told that I was fat, I was too fat, and developed an eating disorder that I still struggle with. So yeah, you know, even though, like, and I truly believe that fat people are treated, you know, differently depending on how fat you are. But I have to say that society is really difficult, like the moment you pass that certain threshold, to everyone. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Darian. Would Rana, yeah, do you would like to add on?
Sorry, I'm just going to add on, right? The other intersectionalities around this. So your race, your disability, and your earning capacity, all this then pushes you further and further into the spectrum of being acceptable and not acceptable, right? So again, like what I think Fariza said, as long the closer you are to being thin and being white and being what is acceptable, which is Eurocentric beauty standards, then you are more accepted compared to people who are darker, fatter, and are disabled. Then you are here and you are not accepted. So that is where the discrimination comes. I just want to talk about the gastric bypass a little bit because I'd gone through like a very similar experience just last week, and I'll be quick. So I went for a minor surgery. It took me like a whole year to go and get like tested and like get two different what's that word? Like people tell you like, yes, like to tell me like a second opinion, like whether I need the surgery or not, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So here I am on the operating theater. I mean, that bed that you lie down, going into the operating theater. And my anesthesian tells me, have you considered bariatric surgery? I am going into the surgery. Like, this is not what you're going to be asking me while I am going into the surgery. First, you're not even my doctor, and this is not the right time. So I just want to say that this happens to people, like it just catches you at really times where it's so inappropriate. And I know not just my audience, every fat person above a certain size has definitely been suggested, bariatric surgery. So I just wanted to add that before we go to the next question.
Okay. All right, thank you so much for that. I think another question I have in particular to this like area we're in is like, are there levels of we know the levels of discrimination within like various social movements, and is this something that kind of happens within like the fat positivity movement? Would Prem like to kind of
hi guys.
On that? Yes.
Thanks, Shiva. So I think that everyone has already sort of talked about it in the beginning, especially Fariza, where she touched on how smaller fats generally get more attention than larger fats. But I just want to point out, I issue everyone a challenge. Just take maybe 5 minutes of your time. Scroll through your Instagram page, for example. Just keep scrolling and look out, especially for these brands that say they're diverse and inclusive of everyone. And then look at their posts where they include fat folk. The reason I do fat folk with air quotations is because these fat folk have very socially acceptable features. By that, let me just explain what I mean. There's no double chin, like what I have, like they previously mentioned, lighter skin. they don't have a large tummy, or if they do, they have fat that's in all the right places, you know, which makes them body goals, because apparently being curvy now is a trend. So, you know, you see people like this. Just take 5 minutes of your time and scroll down your Instagram and tell me how many visibly fat people who look like us are in these ads, who gets endorsements, you know. I can guarantee you, if you look through maybe 5 brands, even plus size brands, you will see the same face again and again and again, because these are socially acceptable fats. And I think that it's time to stop, because there are so many other larger fats who are actually fighting for the correct cause, for the correct reasons, you know, and everything is eclipsed by these people who are talking on behalf of us, you know. And I think it's time to stop, because you don't live my experiences, you don't get to talk on behalf of me. But at the same time, you take the money, you get support from people, you know. Just literally compare the comment section, for example, in Fariza's social media. People are cruel, they are nasty, you know. And then I'm not naming names, but if you go to someone else who's a small fat, the comments are like, oh my God, body goals, I want to look like you, you know, you're so beautiful. And this is literally the clearest way to look at levels of discrimination in the fat. Let me just forget about fat positivity, in the body positivity movement, because frankly, in Malaysia, there's no fat positivity, there's only body positivity. Yeah.
I'm gonna add to that, you know, and Prem, love to you, love your passion, baby. Is that, you know, in 2009, the film Precious came out. Now, I don't know if if you guys have ever seen the movie Precious. And I remember going to see it with a bunch of friends. And, you know, here's the thing about Precious, yeah. I think Hollywood was so taken by the film, not because you know, it's a story about struggle and resilience, because there was an incredibly fat Black girl performing this struggle porn, right? And that's my opinion. You can disagree with me. It's totally cool, yo. But 𝗙𝗵𝗴𝘂𝗙𝗆 𝗵𝗵𝗂𝗀𝗃, you know, props to her. She's a fantastic, talented woman, right? She's not a fantastic, talented fat actress. She's a fantastic, talented actress. And I remember after watching that film, a friend of mine who watched it with me said, whoa, you know, like, you're not that bad, right? And here's the thing. When we talk about, you know, movements particularly, I kind of want to say that not all fat people are allies of other fat people. And I think this is an important thing for me to sort of put out there. You want to know why? Because all your life, you've been sort of trained to recognize what is worse. What's worse than where you're standing? What's a lower pit than where you are, right? And for some reason, Precious was it. You're that fat. You don't resemble anything that is of the general beauty standard that exists. You know, she's incredibly dark-skinned. She suffers from poverty, you know, and on top of that, the shocking twist is somebody had sex with her, right? And I think there are layers to what is implied here. The layers is that if you're another fat person watching it, you start to develop or start to create this sort of levels of distance in your head. So I think when we do talk about, say, the fat positivity movement generally, you know, and things like that, is that people who are sort of, say, body positive, they're saying all these bodies are beautiful. True, and I think this is a very good first step to sort of place yourself in, right? You're starting to consider the ways in which other lives really matter, other bodies really matter. There is a political element here, a very political element. The body is political, and we have to remember that. But for those of us who are sort of pushed into the category of fatness, it is the Hunger Games. It's a fight for survival. It's a fight of recognizing that I'm not worse off than he or she is, or they are, you know? And this is something that if you have lived the life of a fat person And again, just to sort of be very clear here, being fat and having fat on your body, two separate different things, guys. Really different. If you are a straight-sized person who put on a little bit of weight during quarantine and you say, oh my God, I'm so fat, I urge you to reconsider the terms in which you are using. Yeah, because being fat and having fat, again, very different life experience. You can still go into H&M, get yourself cute little top. So I think the ways in which we are sort of recognizing what's happening in the movement is that it really starts by understanding how are we starting off? What are these sort of structures that have been put into our lives or put into fat people's lives in which you're not coming on, all on the same level, hands held together, kumbaya. It's because it's not that at all. One fat person does not necessarily support another fat person, because two fat people walking down the street is a calamity. You know what I mean? So I think it really starts by I think it's very important that we sort of put that out there, and that fat people sort of coming together and recognizing that they are each other's allies is in itself a challenge.
Thank you, Dr. Vilasini. That's very, very, very deep and insightful and strong and bold. Now, I think we can dive in a little deeper. I think some of you mentioned about discrimination, not just, by our families, basically the media and everyone, all the agents of socialization that we know that are around us, but including, the bigger people like medical practitioners, you see. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the stereotypes, common stereotypes that's often associated with plus size, with fat individuals. In fact, in the current ongoing pandemic, like Dr. Vilasini has addressed just now, a lot of people are having like body image issues, which is unfortunate, but they're saying, oh my God, I don't want to stay at home, or I'm going to be unhealthy and fat and gross. So that is a little bit of a, distasteful for a lot of people. So I want to ask our speakers here today, what do you think of notions like that? Notions of when you're staying at home, not doing anything, and you're going to be fat, and that is a bad thing to happen. That is not an ideal thing. You're not being productive enough. You're not doing enough physically, to get your body moving. But then, is that really the case? And how should we digest notions like this, narratives like this?
Okay, I'm going to take this one because, frankly, from March 2020, when the pandemic hit, I think that it boggled me completely when, you see, we're trying to survive a pandemic, which is something completely out of the blue. It happened and everyone's like, oh my God, what the hell is happening? Are we going to die? Like, is COVID going to spread everywhere? It was just terrifying. And we had to be like locked at home, and it was just a lot. And what boggled me was the fact that people's biggest concern was not to look like me or to look like my friends. That's your biggest fear, that you're going to look like us, and I think unpacking that, I just need to say that if you are a straight-sized person who is in so much fear of getting fat, let's just unpack that and let's talk about why are you so scared. Could it be because you have seen fat people being treated horribly by everyone? Is that why you're scared to get fat? Because most of the statements I see on social media during the pandemic about, oh my God, I'm eating too much, I'm going to get fat, ew, gross, that kind of things are made by people who are straight size. And I'm just like, don't you think before you put something out like that? And let me just say, my friends did this as well, friends, acquaintances. And I think it never crossed their mind that the message they're putting out there is, hey, Prem, I ate too much, but I really don't want to look like you, And that is what I got. And it surprised me because you are literally trying to survive a dangerous disease. You're trying to keep your job. You're trying to ensure that your family is safe. But no, the only thing you worry about is whether you are going to gain weight. And like you said, what can we do to, ensure people don't, like say stuff like this? Before even going to that, I think we need to find out where's this fear coming from. It could be what I said. They are just so scared of being treated like shit because that's what happens to fat people. Or it could be something deeper. We don't know. We don't know what it is. But at the end of the day, just reflect a little. I'm sorry, I keep giving you guys exercises. I don't mean to, but just reflect a little on the fact that in the midst of all these things going on, why is it that your weight is your biggest concern? Just think about it. Yeah.
So does anyone want to add to Cream's take?
I'm just going to add something really quick. So there's someone who said in the fat positivity movement, they mentioned that the fear of fatness is the fear of death, because, oh my gosh, I don't know if I said it right, but I think it's fear of fatness. Can anyone correct me if I'm wrong? If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but it's fear of fat equals to fear of fatness, because you are going to die. Basically, that's what everyone tells like fat people, right? Like, you are going to die because you're fat. You are going to get heart disease, you're going to get diabetes, you're going to get whatever, and then you're going to die. So they don't like, and like longevity, health, all this is very, what's the opposite of disability? Like being able-bodied, all these things are like good, right? All these things you want to be. And so the opposite of that is the fear of what people actually have. So basically they're just afraid of dying. But the bigger point is they probably are not even aware of how they actually treat fat people, how fat people are being treated outside. So sometimes it may be a bit complex for them to even get to that, but actually it's like fear of fat, fear of dying. So yeah.
Right. So in regards to that fear of fatness, where do you think, you see, part of the people who's influence our judgments would be these medical practitioners, businesses, and people who are typically very, very influential. So where do you think it went wrong with their mentality when they don't, when they are insensitive towards the psychological implications of the fat community, which also influences other people's judgment, regular people like you and me, on being fat, and now with the pandemic, we're seeing businesses taking the opportunity, fitness gurus taking the opportunity to advise us, to tell us, oh, please go and exercise, please, eat less, eat this, eat that. But then they also fail to take into account that their narrative may be insensitive, that their narrative may be, they're, barking up the wrong tree. So where did this go wrong? Where did these educated people get it wrong?
I feel like there's not one reason why this is the case. I've seen it described as fat panic, right? During the lockdown, fat panic that you might become fat. The diet industry in the world is worth 190 billion. Okay. Everything we consume online, on Netflix, tells us that you are not good enough how you are, right? If you are fat, that means you have failed as a human being, right? People try to couch it in health, and the only reason they couch it in health, it's not because they care about your health. It's because they care about keeping you in that system of going on diets, trying to become thin, keeping that diet industry rolling, right? Making sure that you work your be within the system of production, right? To be within that system of using your energy, right? To work. You are a workforce. So therefore, your value as a person is tied to how much you can produce, how much you can contribute. I don't know if anyone's ever told you this, but you don't have to contribute anything. You deserve help, you deserve everything you want, even if you do nothing. Absolutely nothing. Even if you exist in stasis, you still deserve all this, right? So I think it's important for us to remember that we are being told this. We as a society are part of this system. So there's a lot of unlearning that we have to do. And not everybody, right? And if you see people posting stuff like that, if you care about that person, maybe you can be like, don't do this, because ABCD, whatever, right? And if you don't care about this person, block them, unfollow them. If you don't like what that person is posting, what that person is talking about, just block them, unfollow them. It's okay, right? That is your space, and you are allowed to keep your space feeling safe. Your value is not inherent to how much work you can produce. It is not inherent to how healthy you are. Okay, these two things are not mutually exclusive. Yes, correct. Yeah, mutually exclusive, correct. Okay, that's all. Definitely no one reason why this has happened. Okay, I think race has a lot to play with, comes into play as well, because white supremacy, you have classism. Okay, you have what else? I mean, what you cannot, being fat, you cannot separate this from gender identity, right? You cannot separate this from your class, your race. You can't separate this, because these are all intersecting identities that you belong to, that people belong to. So no one solution, no one. Please, somebody else more eloquent, jump in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Again, Kirith, Mr. Dorian, Ratna, Preem, Dr. Vila, and Far, speaking right now today, moving forward, what should medical practitioners be mindful of? Like, we're talking a lot about mental health nowadays, especially again during the pandemic. Mental health this, mental health that, it's become such a common buzzword, right? Activity and not everything in between. So doctors, they just because they have the card as a doctor, they can't just pick on you, pick on people. Okay, so here's the problem. One of the major reasons, lose weight, but they don't take into account how to approach, how to tackle certain narratives. So I would like to hear your suggestion, like, or your take on this. How medical practitioners who we look up to, those of us who believe in science, we look up to, how should they tackle such topics now that we're bringing it to light today? So take it away.
I'll maybe take this one first, and then yeah. And so before we talk about what medical practitioners should do, I think it's also worthy to bring into light what are the risks of doctors being careless. And it has led to a lot of misdiagnosis, and that has led to people's death. That has led to delayed treatment. So a lot of fat people has experienced a lot of encounters with doctors where they have sought the doctor's help, and then the doctor just told us to lose weight. That is that happens more than you can possibly know. It has led to mistreatment. So because you're misdiagnosed, then you don't get the proper treatment. I'm not sure if you remember, but there's this girl from quite a while ago. She went viral because she said that she has lost appetite to eat. And the doctor told her maybe it's not really a bad thing for you to lose your appetite. And then later on, she went to another and this is not a unique experience. This is experience of a lot of fat people, to a lot of trauma in fat patient. So something that is also common for a lot of fat people is that you are very, very afraid to see the doctor. And this is not because oh my gosh, I just don't like to go to the clinic, I don't want to go to hospital. This is like legit concern. You literally feel like you're going to war. Like I saw a doctor like 2 weeks ago, and I had a screaming match with him because he kept on ignoring my concern and the boundaries that I've set earlier on when I first came into the doctor's office. And so, and there's a research done by this journal called the Obesity Journal in 2013 that has reported that 67% of medical students who were at that time studying to overt stigma towards like fat people. So they have been reported to say that their fat patients, they see as their fat patients as lazy, as unhealthy, and as uncompliant. And these are the ideas that doctors get right when a fat patient walks into the doctor's office. So without even us saying anything, without even them investigating our health and knowing what we are there for, we've been in their head. And this will then cloud their judgment and the treatment that they have towards fat patient. So a lot of times when I go into the doctor's office, they would always tell me, you have to lose weight. This is because you're fat. And so I would ask them, like, is this something that only fat people experience? And they were like, no, it's not, but you're fat. So therefore, and now I'm like, so usually what I would do is that I would ask them, I want you to give me the treatment that you would get for patients who are not fat. And this to see the doctor, we have to fight for ourselves, and we have to come in prepared. And sometimes I even have to like read online on like, the medical condition that I might have. So I have to be my own doctor coming in, because I know that most of the times the doctors would actually just brush me off. So I have to suggest to them, do you think I have this? Can we investigate this? Can you give me an x-ray? And then they would be like, oh, okay, maybe. So this is a reality. This is like something that we experience often. And reward is not a reward for you for not being thin. It's not a reward for you for eating a certain type of food or for exercising. This is human rights, and everyone deserves human rights. And doctor's job is not to judge you. A doctor's job is to actually to treat you, and you deserve the treatments that you deserve and you actually need to get. And so yeah, and there's also like a guidelines that this organization, it's called, I think the organization is called an AACP or something like that. I can send you the link later on, but they have come up with a guideline of how doctors can treat. Actually, they come up with guidelines of like how different people can treat their fat clients. So like how a therapist, how a doctor, how a teacher can be more inclusive in their treatments or in them dealing with their fat clients or fat patients. So whenever I go to a doctor with me and I tell the doctor, if you are going to work with me, this is a document that I need you to read. This is something that I need you to read, because if not, then this is not going to work. So yeah.
If I could just add to what Fa said, right? I think I get a lot of similar experiences between like fat people and trans people, because it's not so much, it's not just seeing the doctor, right? Just seeing the doctor, because first of all, you need to pay the person a certain number of, a certain amount of money, which is usually excessive. Not excessive, sizable, but, and you have no idea how this person will treat you. And so a lot of people, like Fa was saying, a lot of people just do not go and see the doctor because, first of all, you can't afford it. Second of all, even if you can afford it, can you really afford it on someone who is going to probably traumatize you further, right? So just seeing the doctor. There's this whole other process before seeing the doctor, right? Like getting into the clinic, like going to register yourself, being stared at to an inch of your life and having people gossip around you, having the nurses coming and saying like cheeky, like, like one-liners, like, hey, hey, gemuk lah, comel lah, macam, like it's really demoralizing and dehumanizing. And then after that, trying to find a place to sit down and you can't find a place to sit down. It's a whole ordeal. And of course, especially if you're going to a clinic kerajaan, government clinics, and you will have to take your weight and pressure and everything. And then to have people like, the moment when you're about to take your weight and then like a bunch of people come and like try to like look at what the place, it's ridiculous. It's really just such an intense amount of, like disrespectful behavior from every person. Like, that anytime you find someone who is even remotely kind or remotely does not talk about your weight, it feels like a breath of fresh air. It feels like, oh my God, finally I can get healthcare. Like, it's very, very rough. Like, and I feel like, especially when it comes to fat people, right, doctors almost feel like they have the right. They feel like they have the right to sort of say, oh, you need to lose weight. But do the doctors honestly think that they are the first people to say this to us?
Hey, Nola, we know mirror at home. We don't know we're fat until we go to the doctors.
100%. We have no idea whatsoever. And okay, you tell us to lose weight, but then you do not back it up with like, actually what to do and like whether or not it's healthy for us and, whether or not we need it, whether or not it has to do with the whatever that we're going to the doctor for in the first place, right? Like almost like it feels like every disease or every condition that you have, oh, the answer is because you're fat. And there is literally nothing else that is looked at or coming fat. They're like, you're fat. That's the diagnosis. And it feels like, a certain level of, it's so institutionalized that doctors really do not see the problem. And if you try to point it out to them, they're like, well, being fat is truly, cause and blah, 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 like a possibility, but it is just one thing, right? Not all fat people have that. Like, Rana, if you can share it with us. I thought it was really, really fantastic.
Which one?
The one that,
Oh, my doctor?
if fat people have diabetes, then all fat people have diabetes or something.
Did I
Yeah,
can't
I
remember.
believe you shared a story about this. I can't recall, but I thought it was really, really to the point, right? Because, honestly, like, yeah,
I remember.
Rana, go ahead.
It's that thing I shared on Insta stories, right? Basically, it says if fat people have diabetes, then all fat people have diabetes. If all of them, if they have heart disease, then all of us have heart disease. It's like you're saying that what if one person has it, then all fat people have it, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it says something like if fatness causes sickness, then
Yes,
all
that's
fat
right.
people will be sick. If fatness called diabetes, then all fat people will have diabetes. If fatness causes cancer, not the reality, right? It's not. Yeah, it's not.
It's not the truth.
I'm
And
not good at telling
interesting.
stories, but yes, that's
Can I just add a bit, Dorian?
Wait. Let me just finish
okay.
Kiki, then you can take it away. So my last point actually is, there was a time not too long in the past where being fat was seen as healthy. So let's just remember that. Kiki, please go ahead.
Okay, so I think it's also important to note that research is conducted by human beings, and human beings have implicit bias, which will then also affect your research, right? And if we are not, taking into account our implicit bias with a lot of transparency and knowledge and understanding, then it will definitely affect the research. I think also a lot of the times when we consume things like research and articles and all that, we seem to think that correlation is not causation. You can have correlated many things, but that does not mean that is what caused a situation. That's all I wanted to add, just so that when we consume stuff, when we read stuff, when we watch stuff, we understand this as well. Yeah.
And we have to keep in mind that a lot of these researchers, when it comes to research regarding fat and health, they are actually done by medical companies, and these companies have any reasons to push towards a certain narrative that fat is bad, because they are like Qirat said earlier, it's $1 billion industry. And so it's like asking Taliban to do a research about terrorism in Afghanistan. Does that make sense? Do you get information from Taliban about terrorism in Afghanistan? So it doesn't make sense that, and this have your question, what do medical practitioners should do? They should listen to their patients. When I come in with my experiences, you should have the humility enough to listen to my experience. There's a lot of talks right now about how we should incorporate mental health into the overall health practice that we should get, like health treatments that we should get. And I think this is something that a lot of doctors understand, that there's so much talks about traumas and how traumas have affected our health, and how, by having traumas being triggered, it can also trigger a lot of medical conditions inside our body. And this is the conversations that are happening right now in the world. But the doctors in Malaysia, especially, they're not caught up with this. Their knowledge of medicine is still 20 years back. It's not updated idea when we talk about BMI, for example, and how backwards it is, and how it's not relevant anymore. in the medical practitioner, in medical practice right now. Like when I say this to my doctors, they were shocked. The face that they have, they're like, there's nothing wrong with saying this or saying that. But the rest of the medical world has moved on. This is not something that people talk about anymore. Like, I don't get it. Like the medical health doctors and the physical health doctors have to communicate. And this is where it's lacking right now. And yes, maybe a lot of fat people have a lot of medical problems, but do you know whether it's not because, like, you know, the stigmatization, the discrimination, and the bullying that we have experienced our whole life? Like, why don't you do a research on that? You know? And so there are so many different layers to health that is not discussed, especially in our context. Are just very complicit with their knowledge from 20 years ago that has not been updated since that, and you know, their ego of like, I'm the doctor, so I'm right, that they are not willing to listen. And this is a big problem. And this is what I find with a lot of doctors that I see as well, like that they are not willing to listen, basically.
Thank you so much, Far. That is very, very true at all levels. That needs to be made by the Malaysian, I mean, at least the local healthcare community in regards to ethics and, you know, listening to your patients, most importantly. I would like to hear from Dr. 𝗕𝗓𝗄𝗎𝗓. Do you have anything to add in regards to what Far has mentioned just now?
Well, you know, I think everybody sort of mentioned an amount of information to be put in there. These are all true to us, you know. But of course, the individualized experiences. I too, like, you know, I remember being bitten by a dog once, and I took my time in going to the doctor because I knew that the first thing they'd say is, hey, you know, let's not look at your gangrene. Let's talk about your weight. And true enough, when I went in, that actually happened. And, you know, I think it is a struggle in sort of, how do I put it? It's such a mental preparation in speaking to somebody that you need to, and at the same time having to negotiate, a lot of negotiation, actually, combative negotiation about, let's focus on the problem. I got bit by a dog. I mean, I know I'm fat, but can you sort of focus on the issue of the dog bite? And I think, you know, this is certainly telling. I mean, I kind of need to sort of put a justification out there. I think with COVID-19, there is this transformative view of doctors who are frontliners at this moment, right? They are now sort of seen in a different light where, well, not different, but in a much more exacerbated light of in the language of survival and survivalship. So I think, you know, this is of course not an attack on doctors per se, but attack on the system that they've adopted along the way, a system that I think needs to be, you know, painfully because, you know, fat, what do you call, patients, like trans patients, like gay patients, like disabled patients, like rural patients, like indigenous patients have agency. They have the right to tell you, and there is a sort of a medical responsibility to listen above all else. Because, you know, the nuances of these experiences really help us better the advancement. There is a sort of a colonial approach or approach to doing this sort of medical practices, and I think we have to be aware. If there's anybody here who has a relative, a mom, a dad, a brother, a sister, or they themselves are hoping to be in the medical world, I think this is certainly a sort of space to really bring it back into your own personal spaces, rather than just sort of listening to 6 talking heads sort of like for hours. Is that the real world implications is that speak to the people that you can, right? Agency, I think, is a very big, important currency for us to continue, especially in an age of, deteriorating mental health in the worst of levels.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for that, Vila. I think I definitely agree with you. I think as much as we want, we had this lot of conversation about medical discrimination. I think it's also really important to be having these conversations within your family members or people who are kind of interested in going into I would say a well-rounded doctor or somebody who's like a little bit more sensitive or aware as opposed to being a little bit ignorant when dealing with different people, a diverse group of people in a way. So thus far we've discussed about like medical discrimination, but I think we're gonna kind of steer towards, for example, like systemic discrimination. And in a way, like, I'm not sure about the others, but I think for me, like I've had a lot of experiences where people are like, oh, you should dress according to your like fruit shape, the pear and the apple, flattering body type, or like, wear black so you look thinner. Like, there's like this code where you have to wear only a certain X amount of colors or stripes that are horizontal or vertical or something that like make you look skinnier or something like that. So maybe this Rana could answer this. Would you say this is like a form of like systemic discrimination in a way?
So I feel, this is what I feel, right? Like fat people take up space in this world. And like that, like you have to hide. I don't like your body, therefore you have to hide. And you have to play by the rules that, I don't know, whoever created that black makes you look slimmer, or stripes are going to make you look fatter, all these things, whatever. But it's there to, make you more palatable, make you more watered down, and make you seem like you're following the rules for what to be performing for them, I think. And I feel like, it's a way for society or people to tell you that you can be fat, and we want to embrace you being fat, but you have to do it in a way that is accordance to what we think a good fat is, therefore don't wear sleeveless clothes, don't wear tube tops, don't wear, like what, you can wear these stripes but not these stripes, don't wear white, like, all this stuff. And I just feel like it's a way to, they have this idea that fat people are loud, and if you live your truth, if you live like the way you want to live, then you are being like a bad fat person, are going to be loud, and you're going to be unapologetic about yourself. But here I am, if I wear like I don't know, like something like to make me look flattering, or something like wearing like a corset inside and like a skinny shaming, what's shaping pants or whatever, then I am saying, look, I am who I am, but I want to appear more desirable. I want to appear more toned down, really, because now from 3 stomachs I have 1 flat big stomach, because that's what the shapers do to you. So I feel like it's just a way to get people to be a watered down version of themselves. And yes.
Make it small. It's a way to make it small.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but like if you're talking to this group, like for us, like we've literally just like say fuck flattering, just fuck it.
add on to something, Ratna. I mean, of course, fine, Ratna, and even Prem, I think, in the industry that she sort of works in, will have so much more things to sort of add to this. But you know how we sort of grow up with these beauty magazines that cost like, I don't know, like those days, like, I mean, I was born in 1755, so those days it cost 5 cents, right? So yeah, and I am a 1,000-year-old woman inside, and what's my secret? French fries. But you know, when you're growing up and you buy these magazines and you're sort of going through it, and caught my eye always, because you know, magazines are based off the seasons that are happening in America, and they go and say how to get your body beach ready, right? Look great in that swimsuit. And here's the thing about living a fat life is that you're living a life in weight. You're constantly in weight. There is an element of sitting in the car waiting for the traffic light to turn. I can sort of describe it, right? And I feel that I've always been waiting for the light to turn green for me to be beach board ready, without realizing I was beach board ready from the day I popped out of my mama, right? But it's just that they didn't think I was. What I am very appreciative of what we call a woke generation, I still don't get it, a lit generation that listens to slaps music. I don't know these languages, kids. Is that, you know, I think there is there's a change that's of a woke culture that exists. Now, of course, that's a different conversation for another day. We're not going to go into that. But what I am appreciative is this whole, you know, wear what you want, be who you is, you know, love who you are, which, just to be really clear, for someone like me, that didn't exist in my teens or in my 20s, right? And having seen that at this point is very fascinating to sort of see that and experience that, because this is a generation that has sort of caught acceptance. Now, how that shapes later on is a completely different story. But what I'm just sort of saying is, whether you're 80 kgs, 100 kgs, 120 kgs, right? I think language in which they sort of remind you to prepare, to participate in preparing your body to be beach ready needs to be cancelled. That needs to end. Because you can go to the beach anything, but wear mask lah, SOP lah, don't jump in, hold hands and hug a person. That one, you don't want COVID lah. But you know, for everything else, there is a deservedness that we have not entertained. And suddenly jumping straight into that is seen as incredibly taboo. So I'm sort of going to give it back to like Prem or something. I felt like I needed to say that, and that I am incredibly beach ready.
I think just a short point before we use up all your time, but I think I just want to point out that even using numbers for your weight is not necessary anymore. You are not defined by 120 kg, whatever, it doesn't matter anymore. It shouldn't even be part of the conversation. We last, right? That shouldn't now. And just continuing on what 𝗕𝗏 said about even in the line of work that I'm in, it's really funny that there's a stereotype going around that people in marketing are always super slim and, you know, walk around in high heels, in the most fashionable clothes, and, you know, they're just all very pretty girls. I'm in marketing, and when I tell people that, they're like, oh, you're in marketing? And I'm like, yeah, I do marketing. And then they're like, what kind of marketing? I'm email marketing. And they're like, oh, okay. So, you know, it just crosses their face. Oh, okay, she's in email marketing. So that means she sits behind a computer the whole day and she doesn't need to show her, you know, monster face and body to the world. But my point is, it shouldn't freaking be that way. And even right up till today, when it comes to finding a job in the corporate world, everyone knows people have this stereotype of fat people, that they're passive, they're ineffective, they're lazy. And I don't know where it came from once again, because, you know, I don't know who came up with these things, but at the end of the day, I think that is also something that we need to start changing, you know. whether it's putting a section in our resume that flat out says that we are fat, proud, and loud, you know, and that is part of who I am. That's my personality. So if you're looking at my body, you don't want to hire me, fuck you, I guess, sorry. But at the end of the day, if you look at my personality, something you want, and I have something to offer to you, great. It starts as simple as that. And to be honest, it has worked for me. That's something, if you're looking at solutions for fat people in the corporate world, that is something that has worked for me. I've put it literally in all the resumes I send out, a whole section in about me stating that I'm fat, loud, and proud. I know I'm fat. You don't have to remind me I'm fat. And that's just the way it's going to be. And surprisingly, people take quite well to that because you are shutting them up. You're pointing out the one weapon they have, one thing that they have against you, which is your weight. So by doing that, you're just sort of like telling people, you know what, you hire me even though I'm fat, or, don't hire me at all, basically taking you for who you are.
Can I just add a bit more to that? Just like how you have the gender wage gap, you have a weight wage gap, right? So the heavier you are, the less you make. And the heavier you are, the fatter you are, you tend to be pushed into areas of work that are more physically demanding and that are more focused on caretaking and things like that. So these have really real life effects on people, right? When you everybody mentioned going to the doctor is something fat people avoid, right? Because you're going to go to the doctor's going to be like, lose weight. But what that means is, okay, fat people hold off going to the doctor till the situation becomes unbearable, so they don't catch whatever disease that they are having, whatever is wrong with them early, which means that the situation is then worse for them. Living in a fat body is extremely stressful. Okay, that itself has an effect. Research shows has an effect on how you live life. It increases your chances of depression, of anxiety. It is stressful, and what does stress do on the body, right? Stress creates high blood pressure. Stress creates other illnesses as well that come along with it. So I think it's important to note that there are very real manifestations of discrimination against fat people, not only like in the workplace, but also on your body, right? Yeah, that's it. I just wanted to add that in.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for that. I think that was really insightful, and it kind of gave us a lot of like insight on the systemic discrimination that's kind of being faced. But I think the next question I kind of have, I can maybe, so in your opinion, how do you feel the systemic discrimination influences an individual's perception towards themselves? I think also, so this is a two-parter. Also, I think there's a lot of like narratives about beauty and intelligence and kindness that's like centralized on white people, and whoever that doesn't actually fit like that ideal often get like marginalized, or they're not really like, how do I say this, like they just don't live up to that level, and essentially they get like discriminated in a way. So could you maybe also give us insight into like the common forms of discrimination that's faced, that's been transferred from society's norm, essentially?
Okay, thank you, Shiva. So how does systemic discrimination influence an individual's perspective towards themselves, right? That's such a good question, right? I think a lot of times, especially if you grow up fat, there's a lot of internalized self-hate. There's a lot of internalized fat phobia. A lot of times you would do things to yourself that is just pretty terrible, right? Like you try, you try all the diets there is, you try all the different exercises that don't work because it doesn't work for your body type, or you know nothing about metabolism, because that's not what people talk about. People talk about you being fat. It's your fault. And you internalize that, and that becomes, you think that it's your fault. And this leads to all kinds of different trauma that you carry into your adulthood. And a lot of times you don't even realize that it's your trauma, acting out, the different things that, when you behave in the world, right? There is the conscious part that, you know what you're like doing, but then there's also the subconscious part that affects what you do, right? And that and influences what you do. And that has got to do with so many things that you're not readily aware of, like, for example, your trauma, your past, your the different things that have happened before, perceptions, yeah. And so all of that fat phobia gets internalized. Hello. So all of that fat phobia sort of gets internalized, and you, first of all, you behave in a terrible way towards other fat people, but most of all, you are terrible to yourself. And that affects so much, like in every section of your life, like from relationships to the jobs that you look for,
Preach, correct.
There's always this feeling that you are not worthy. You're not worthy of that promotion. You're not worthy of that amazing job. You're not worthy of trying something new. You just try to keep at what you just appreciate what you have and think that that's all you're good for. But that's honestly not it. And you do more than you need to, because you always have to prove to other people, right, that you are capable despite being fat. So yeah, I think that's a lot of this. And about the narratives of beauty, intelligence, kindness being centralized on white people, absolutely. And I think that is a function of our pop culture and media, that is mostly white centric. I won't even say any other centric, like it's just white centric, let's be real. And I think also in fatness, right? I think there's a lot of Black fat activists that are, reshaping the narratives about fat acceptance and ooh, ooh, ooh. And fat positivity. I think right now, if you want to add on, because I feel like you know way more about this. Sorry for just like volunteering.
I think, yeah, we cannot forget that the fat acceptance movement was started by fat, Black, queer people, and which then trickled down into body positivity and became watered down. But, there are people who are doing the real work, and I can tag some of them in the chat where you can go and follow them. And I think we are like starting out, right? Because they've started that, and then we learn from them. But without them, we would not have this wealth of knowledge and experience. So I will tag some of the accounts that you need to follow in the chat.
All right. So,
sorry, I think Bila wanted to say something.
Go ahead.
I'm really sorry. This is jumping the gun by like a mile, right? But Dorian said something that totally triggered me when he sort of talked about relationships and love. I kind of also wanted to add another tangent. When you think about fat people and sex, even, right? I think. And I just this afternoon had a conversation with Kirith and Fariza about this whole, sex and, fetishization and the fat body. But before we get into all that really juicy stuff, You know, it's like I personally can sort of say with a lot of experience that when you are thinking about ways in this language of what does a fat person feel like they deserve, what does society allow fat bodies to deserve, I can say that, you know, I don't think I knew that I deserve love until somebody had to sort of tell me. Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, these are devastating realities because there is a lot of self-sabotage, I think, in that journey. There's a lot of sort of games that you play or implications that you put on yourself in that journey for love. I remember, you know, boys sort of liking me when I was much younger, and I would just, you know, I would just find any possible way to sort of turn them around. Why? Because it could be a bet, or, you know, they're doing it for, you know, shits and giggles, or, you know, nobody really likes someone like me when they could like anybody else who is like 30 kilograms lighter than me, right? My worth was my weight, and it remained there for a very long time. And, you know, these are things that are frightening because till today, I think, you know, you really need to check yourself when you see a fat person in love, because it isn't sympathy, it isn't always charity, it isn't a kink. And that, you know, I think at the end of the day, there is there are very real implications to the design of that narrative. I don't know when, or how should I say, I don't know when I truly told myself, take it easy, right? A person can love you because they completely love you, right? They totally, like, they dig your body and they want to sleep with you simply because they want to experience you and not the rolls of fat on your stomach or on your thighs or the stretch marks that you carry. And I think, you know, these are things that a lot of people who are fat or who have lived fat lives, and this may also include people who are ex-fat, right? Who lived fat lives and, you know, became thin and, you know, sort of question the motivations that led them down that path. Because I think at the end of the day, if you ask any fat person who, you know, are within the intersection of other things, what it is that they want, I think is to find pure absolute happiness. And that in itself is an incredibly loaded thing to go out and look for. Yeah, 𝗕𝗕𝗱𝗆.
Can I add something? I feel like the other thing that that is rarely ever talked about is the lengths of things that we will do and go to please other people just for them to see us. And this, you know, manifests in relationships, in sexual relationships, in friendships at your workplace. But because we were not seen, and it's really interesting because we were seen as only as fat, right? We're seen only as fat. So we are sort of like really seen, but also not seen. I don't know how that exists together, but not being heard, not being seen as anything other than fat, made me do things that I felt I had to do, where actually I didn't need to prove my worth like that. There were people, things, and places that I didn't want to be in, but I had to be in because I thought that that was the only way attention that I needed. And I wish I had known that there was a different way, that I didn't need to do those things. And I really hope and pray that, you know, the younger people don't have to deal with that kind of mindset, you know, where they have to really put there's no such thing as worth at that time. There's no language for being worthy, and knowing that I actually have I have so many other things other than being fat, because that's how people looked at me. So that's the last thing that I wanted to add to that, Mila.
Yeah, go ahead if you like.
Sorry. I just also wanted to add the work that I do is focused very much on gender-based violence. And there's also been several studies that show a link between the rate of gender-based violence and a person's fatness. Right? Of course, in the article they use body mass index, and I'm choosing not to. And because of how fat, I'm going to say women specifically are treated in society, and how this is it's so insidious that many women stay in abusive relationships, in terrible situations, and tolerate this violence because they feel that they are a woman who has finally found somebody to love them, and that if they don't tolerate this person, they don't stick with this person, then they will never find love ever again. They will never find a partner ever again. And this it's when we talk about fat phobia, when we talk about discrimination, we also have to remember the internalized fat phobia that we have, right? And how that affects us as we walk through life. And this is a very real and serious issue that not many people talk about. It's just something to note. Yeah. Anyone else want to jump in?
I'm going to jump in back really quickly. I'm so sorry, yeah.
Okay.
But I kind of want to link this to also these images, these sexual images, because the way in which you're looking at things like pornography, for example, really impacts this, right? The sort of, because fat fetish is a category in itself, right? And, pornography in itself is really, it's about sex, sure, but what it really is about visuals and narratives of power. Who is the perspective, or in what perspective are you filming this pornography? How are you viewing this pornography? Who is the person, who's the dominant actor of sexual power in this story? And, why is it always a fat fetish? Why hasn't there been a white thin fetish, right? Because that's what it is. Pornography directs that attention there. You are actually viewing fat bodies in a very sort of, do anything to this body because nobody else wants it kind of scenario. These are very dangerous images. Now, I get it. Of course, there are people who are intersized, as they call it, who are experiencing sex. And of course, there is a certain element where a fat person might be attracted to a thin person and vice versa. I'm not going to rob people of these very intimate experiences because these are also real world experiences. But, I think, the same way in which boys take toxic masculinity and ideas of the patriarchy from these visuals of power and put it into their relationships, fat experiences, fat sexuality, fat intimacy is also directed by this, right? A hot, thin guy who, there's this Netflix movie called Dumpling. I don't know if any of you have ever heard about it, right? With Jennifer Aniston. And this really hot, this guy called Bo who comes in and, he's like, I like dumpling because, I like her for her, right? And that's like the message of the story. And she can't unpack that because she's like, why would you? Well, these are real world implications. And what I am saying is that when we're talking about fat fetishization, while it does exist, while there is an avenue for that because some people do want it, I'm also sort of very concerned in the way that that's what it is in real life. Oh Lord, Dorian with the kitty cat, poor little baby Toba. So all I'm sort of saying is that when we are thinking about intimate spaces and fat bodies, male and female, right? We have to be very mindful of the way in which there is a performance in the bedroom. There is a performance in the sexual activity, in the sexual choreography, because we've been imparted with these ideas.
And can I just quickly add one last thing? Okay, so like when you see a fat person, either we are hypersexualized or we are stripped of any sexual whatever, you know, there's no in between where we are looked at as a human being who has desires and who has sexual needs. It's these two extremes. And yeah, that's what I wanted to add. And that's why it's upsetting to see when people, you know, I think this is like, you know, if women choose to call themselves like fat or whatever, it's empowering to them. But when men look at us and think that we exist just for cis men, by the way, when they think that we exist for them and saying things like, oh, send me a video or send me a picture or whatever on Instagram, you know, like that's where they completely strip us of any sort of, you know, they dehumanize us and think that we're there only to be sexual for their sexual needs lah. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Thank you very much. Now, due to the interest of time, I just want to pick your you know, your view a little bit. Like Ratna mentioned a little bit about Eurocentric beauty standards just now, and Preem, who works in the marketing in the department, talks about body goals and, you know, the socially acceptable type of fats. And Dr. Vila also mentioned about, you know, the woke culture and how, you know, we have different standards now that the new generation is more accepting. But when I want to touch a little bit about the feminism context here. Do you think there is still inequality, taking into account the entertainment that we subscribe to, the media that we, you know, that we listen to, the influencers that we also keep up with? Do you think there is inequality still against fat people, seeing just to based on your observation, of course, your experience, that now that you're here today, there is still inequality against fat people? And combining these, do you think fat women have it harder in society? Yeah, I know it's a very like obvious question, but I just want to hear from you in terms in the lens of feminism, you know?
Okay. I think fat is a feminist issue, right? Like I said earlier, fat is an issue for every type of intersection, right? Even when it comes to queer folk, right? What is the famous phrase that we hear on Grindr? No fat, no femmes, no Asians, right? These intersections, you cannot separate them from one another, right? They exist together, and therefore they need to be addressed together, right? When you spoke about, just let me know if I got your question wrong. When you spoke about social media and you spoke about how there is still inequality, yeah, I feel like fat women are extremely policed, especially on social media. Instagram will let a supermodel wear a string bikini, but Instagram will not let a fat woman wear a string bikini. I've seen multiple creators that I follow be like shadow banned, their posts taken down because of this reason. Like Ratna said, plus fat people are overly sexualized, right? Even when they aren't doing anything sexual, right? It is fat women find it hard to exist everywhere. Yes, even online, in person. Just generally everywhere. I think feminism, being what it is, gives us the space to be able to remember to take all these intersections into account. That's how I choose to see things, right? Things are not black and white, right? Our lived experiences, who we are as people, our intersecting identities affect how we view things, how we experience things. So I think feminism, when practiced in the way it's intended, does make space for it. Dr. 𝗕𝗲, you nak tambah?
Oh my God, we've got 10 minutes before this ends and I want to respect it so much. I'm just going to end it with this, or at least my part, and then I'm going to let the beautiful, beautiful members of the panel sort of say something, in which is that if you do come across the fat acceptance movement, anybody who supports it or wants to sort of figure it out a little more, that's just one rule of thumb that I'd like for all of you to remember. Fat acceptance isn't about a bunch of fat people trying to get everybody to be fat. Okay? None of us are trying to stuff down 10 burgers down your throat and ask you to eat tons of fries and take a swim in a pool of grease. It's not that at all. In fact, I don't think that's part of it. If it does go there, then certainly that's not the fat acceptance movement that I'm in support of. Apart from fat acceptance, of course there's the body positivity movement, and then there's also the body neutrality movement. Again, a talk for another time, friends of 𝗙𝗲𝗍. But while we are here, at the core of it, the fat positivity movement is about dignity, and you have to remember that. It is about dignity. If you want to have dignity in every aspect in life, in your sickness and in your health, and even till your death, yes, it's like marriage, then fat people want that too. And it's very difficult to navigate through the world when that concept of dignity is not afforded to people whose bodies are not straight. Hence bodies, this includes bodies that are, are colored on a spectrum in which is not white. And these includes bodies that are disabled. So think about that for a moment. Yeah, and I think that's a very, very important takeaway. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much for that, everyone. As mentioned, we're kind of running a little bit behind time, but I do have a few questions that I kind of really want to get to before we kind of conclude the whole thing, as well as go through some questions. So one of the questions I kind of have is that we really tackled a lot of like challenges and questions that fat individuals kind of struggle with. Yet we always kind of like, when we talk about our experiences, you kind of like claim as being like, oh, you're overreacting when you talk about the struggle, or you're told to be grateful for not struggling with a bone body in a way, or like struggling, assuming that the struggles of a skinny person is like more or less or lesser than what you're experiencing in a way. So in your opinion, maybe 𝗕𝗲𝗍 could take this first. Do you think like skinny shaming versus fat shaming, is it equal, or does one carry like more weight than the other?
I think this topic is extremely appropriate given our Instagram drama. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is body shaming and fat shaming and fat phobia are two very different things, right? Body shaming is when somebody talks about your body in whatever form it is, right? Says or comments not nice things about your body, right? I think that's really, really important to note. That is not great, and nobody should do it, right? I think fat phobia, fat shaming can be experienced. Fat shaming can be experienced by anyone. Body shaming can be experienced by anyone, whether you're fat or thin, whatever it is, right? Fat shaming is experienced by fat people, okay? And they are so different because fat phobia is something that affects every part of your life, right? It affects the systemic parts of your life. It affects your ability to get work, which means whether or not you can feed yourself, whether or not you can feed your family. It affects your ability to access to medical healthcare. It affects your ability to go to school, right? It affects your ability to live your life as a whole human being, right? Because you cannot even access those parts of your life, right? I think this is the difference between body shaming and fat phobia is that you cannot love yourself out of fat phobia. Do you understand what I mean? Like you can, I am happy with, but I still cannot go to the mama and sit in their small ass chairs, right? I'm happy with how I look and I am comfortable in my body, but I cannot go to a university and sit in those, what do you call those chairs with the flippy things? You know what I mean? I can't do that.
Torture chairs.
Yeah, torture chairs. Great. Okay. This affects every single part of my life. If I go and apply for a job that another straight-sized person has applied for, more likely than not, that straight-sized person is going to get the job. Or if we both get the job, that straight-sized person is going to be paid higher than me, right? I think the takeaway is that I think people confuse self-love and body positivity and things like that, and think that if you love yourself enough as a fat person, you can overcome all these forms of systemic discrimination because you have loved yourself out of it, right? Which is not true, right? I think fat phobia is extremely insidious and it's acceptable in society. People tolerate it, right? People won't tolerate racism now, like how they tolerate fat phobia, right? You cannot you cannot be overtly racist to someone, but you can be overtly fat phobic to someone, right? That's, to me, that's the difference. Skinny shaming should comment on your body, right? Like your body is your body in whatever form it is, but there is a different level of severity that fat people experience. Yeah. I hope that was clear. If it's not, I'm happy to unpack further. Okay.
I think that was really clear. I think that was
Can
good.
can I add a little bit? I think when Kira said, like, you know, how we can't self-love ourselves out of you know, being systemically like discriminated. I feel like when we focus on self-love to solve the problems that fat people face, it also takes away the responsibility of society and the community. It takes away the doing of, like, you know, the system, the people around us that has been discriminating us, and puts all the responsibility on fat people. And that's not fair. It's not our responsibility to prepare chairs that accommodate us. That's a human right. It's not our responsibility to make doctors listen to us. That's the doctor's responsibility. It's not our responsibility to make sure that hospitals have MRI machines and equipment that can accommodate us. That is the responsibility of the hospital. So focusing on self-love doesn't solve systemic problems because the responsibility is not on fat people. This responsibility is a collective responsibility. The responsibility is by everyone, the government, your colleagues, your boss, your family members, every single person. So yeah.
I think that's very beautiful. very beautiful statement. So to conclude our interview today, I would like to hear from all of you, all our very esteemed speakers today, given the hoo-ha that took place, less than 48 hours ago on our Instagram page. We can tell that conversations of fat acceptance and fat positivity, are still, very low key, and it's essential for us to move forward. And it's essential that, we're giving it enough light, that people around us in our community, old and young, are aware and acknowledge that, we fat people deserve to be treated just as nicely, just as equally as others as well. So my question is, what is like the one solution or takeaway you want to suggest? What are your last words you'd like to suggest for audiences tonight who are struggling with fat acceptance, whether it be between themselves or, towards their perception towards the community? We can start with Mr. Dorian. I haven't heard him speaking for quite a few seconds.
I think the one thing that can be done is self-reflection. I think the more we do that, the better we will be, to reflect on how fat phobic we are, to reflect on what we do that, even, unintentionally or subconsciously, the things that we do, the things that we think that are fat phobic, like, we need to work to like change that. And it's not easy. It's really not easy to change something that's so internalized, that is so normalized throughout the culture, right? Like throughout society, it feels like that is the only like way of thinking, that fat is wrong, but truly it isn't. We know that. And I think, there's a lot of self-reflection that needs to be done. And like even for myself, even while being fat, like it took me such a long time to unlearn so many things, and I'm still on that journey. I'm still not done. And I think that's the important part, to know that there's so much to unlearn, and to just keep working on yourself. Oh my God. Okay. Yes, I'm so sorry for not really speaking much. It's just like hurting me. Yes.
Maybe I can add. So if you are a straight-sized person, and you're not impacted by fatness, right? I think it's important to know when to step in, right? That's really important. If somebody says something fat phobic, if people are not being considerate about seating, about activities, things like that, speak up. Also, equally important is to know when to shut up and when to stay back, because taking up space is a real issue. And I think you need to learn how to make space for people who are impacted by, and this applies to whatever marginalization issue it is, right? It's important for you to give that space to the person. It's important for you to how do you say, elevate? I think about your politics, right? Like Vila said, the body is political. What is your politics rooted in, right? Do a little audit of your life. Why do I feel this way? Why does looking at this fat person make me uncomfortable, right? Unpack that, because that's work that only you can do. No one else can do for you. I think nobody wants to hear about your diet. Nobody needs to know nobody needs you to comment about their bodies or give unsolicited health advice. Like, this is all not necessary. I was reading, I'm not sure where online, but they gave a really, really good like guide. If something cannot be fixed in 10 seconds, don't comment about it, right? If you see something on someone that cannot be fixed in 10 seconds, no need to say anything. Just keep quiet. I think that's really, really, it's a piece of advice that I find very useful, right? Because sometimes you don't know whether you can or can't say something. Yeah, I think these are the few points that if you want to be an ally, it's something you can do and something you can practice.
Yeah, I just want to add on to what Qirat said, because I think it's absolutely 100% true. You know, Qirat, I agree with you completely. And I think also another part, just a small little part to add on, being an ally, I think is also about taking accountability for your own fat phobia. I have friends who are like, you know, who come to me and be like, you know, Prem, it's okay. We understand your fat. I understand your journey. But to look again, the same people are not here today learning to, you know, looking to educate themselves on fat acceptance. At the same time, they are making fun of other fat people. You know, taking accountability is basically your fat acceptance doesn't just extend to your friends or people you like. It also extends to other people, because people you don't know. Because if you're talking about another fat person in a very bad way, what does that say about, you know, what you think of me? Because I'm a fat person too. And I think that yesterday's whole situation, which really riled me up with the person who shall not be named, basically what really got to me was the fact that I just need to know from him, until this conversation about fat acceptance came up, how often were you fighting for inclusivity and diversity in these conversations? Or did you find it necessary to just do it when fat people got 2 hours? At this point, 2 hours, 6 minutes. But, you know, did it rile you up that we had a place to share our experiences, to share things we have gone through? So, you know, I think that that's a very important question for you to, you know, for especially that person to look into. I hope this inclusivity goes on beyond this one session that Dia and them has held. You know, focus on like, make sure it's more than that. Fight for your fat friends if you see them being laughed at. You know, until that is done, I don't think that fat acceptance will be able to proceed or move forward.
Okay, I would like to add, you know, like, basically fat people deserves human rights. If you support trans rights, if you support gay rights, if you support women's rights, but you don't support fat people getting rights, then I need you to think about this humanity that you have. If your humanity is conditional, then it's not humanity. If your kindness is selective, then it's not kindness. So, you know, maybe think about like who your kindness and humanity is for, and do you extend it to those who need it the most? And for our fellow fat friends out there who have been very hard on yourself and who have been struggling to accept yourself and your body your whole life, I would tell you what my therapist asked me to do. Think about your 5-year-old self and think about that kid. What is it that that kid needs the most? What form of kindness does your 5-year-old need the most? And I think it's not too late for you to give yourself that kindness now. You've been kind to everyone around you your whole life. Why not extend that kindness to yourself? So yeah, that's it for me.
Yay. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for that. So we kind of gonna speed up like the agenda that we had. So we're gonna take a quick picture with everybody. So if y'all could turn on your cameras so we can see y'all. Also, if you're not comfortable doing that, you can definitely react with the reaction button so we know you're here. Our PR team shall be taking the pictures. Or is it Hessa? Sorry.
I think it's PR.
Okay. Okay, so we're gonna do one picture and then a boomerang after that. And then after that, we're gonna be progressing to the Q&A session of 5 questions going to the after party. Okay? Okay.
Thank you, 𝗕𝗏. Hi, everyone. It's the publicity team here at 𝗕𝗏/𝗕𝗏. So at the moment, there are 3 pages of you guys, and we'd love to see each and every one of you. So I'm going to take 3 pictures in total. The first picture being the first page, second page being second page, and so on. So get ready. And like 𝗕𝗏 said, you can also turn on your reactions. So we're going to do the first page right now. So everybody smile. Since we did the first page, can we please do a quick boomerang? Yes. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Thank you so much, first page. And now we're going to move to the second page. Okay. Hi, second page. Thank you so much for waiting. So I need you guys to put on your best smiles. And here we go. 3, 2, 1. Screenshot. Okay, thank you. Now we're going to do the boomerang. So do a really cute pose or whatever. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Thank you, second page. Last but definitely not least, hi, third page. Thank you for waiting. It is your turn to shine right now. So I'm going to take a screenshot first. 1, 2, 3, smile. Oh, I love the reactions. Thank you. And here's your boomerang. 3, 2, 1. Got it. Thank you guys so much for being supportive, participating. You guys should also check out our Twitter page if you like, if you'd like to also see our assistant director 𝗕𝗏 been live tweeting about the event. If you want to see some points that were made and etc. Thank you for cooperating. Back to you, 𝗕𝗏 and Hes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to be moving on to the Q&A session now. Azza, do you want to go first?
Yes. So the first question, I'm just picking it out randomly. So I've been told that Dr. Bilashimi is going to leave soon. So I think the first question, I'm going to direct it to you, Dr. Bila. So the first question is, oh, very redundant. See, how should you respond to people always bringing up skinny shaming when you are talking about fat shaming?
Skin shaming.
I think they mean skinny shaming.
Skinny.
Yeah, skinny shaming. Yeah.
Basically, you can't just talk about fat people lah.
Where can everyone will die if they do that?
Yeah. Well, all fat means all diabetes or something like that. I don't know. I'm not phrasing it very well. I think again, very apt given the sort of the recent events. Although, do you guys hear that? That's my cat trying to make a presence. Her name is 𝗕𝗏, very demanding, but she won't make it into the video right now. I think it's an incredible. Here's the thing. We've had an absolutely lengthy 2-hour discussion about categories in which you sort of place fatness and then the skinniness. Now, I think for those of you here who may be more, I guess, well-versed with the internet world, there was a YouTuber called Eugenia something who, people were really worried about, because she had become so frighteningly thin, right? And, yes, Eugenia Cooney, thank you very much. And, there were these very pressing pushes to get Eugenia the sort of help that she needed to sort of get there. Now, here's the thing. I think when the issue it may have taken Eugenia, or at least fans of Eugenia, so long is because in the area of skinniness or absolute thinness or underweightness that she had been suffering from, she sort of coasted through for the majority of the time before it became incredibly frightening or very dangerous. Which was in her, in the most extreme, she probably weighed less than 40 kilograms, 30 kilograms, something of that sort, yeah? Which sort of goes to tell us that on both ends of the extreme of this spectrum, it's uneven. It's like this, right? Of course, they are extreme ends, but this, no pun intended, weighs more. It means that the categories of fatness, the moment you sort of enter it, even if in its most minimal state, is already bad. But if you see somebody sort of slowly becoming more and more underweight, it takes society a while because thinness is always equated with goodness, right? Success is equated to beauty. So unless you have an extreme form of success and beauty, aka thinness, it's not going to be questioned. And I think this is where there is sort of a thin privilege that exists in the universe. You can go through it, you can be bulimic and whatnot, sort of living through that sort of environment and circumstances until it becomes too extreme for comfort. But when it comes to fatness, a person may have, and I've mentioned this earlier, put on weight, they may have fat, and that in itself is already a cause for danger. It's a sign of the lack of success. It is a sign of failure. It is a sign that, you know, you've stopped functioning, you've stopped becoming productive. And I think this is where we have to recognize how it is that thin privilege has a much, longer lasting effect than fatness ever would. And this is why I think it is an uneven conversation. You want to have a conversation about, you know, the effects of skinniness, massive skinniness, unhealthy skinniness. I'm all for it. Of course, there is a stigma for it, but unless you're walking as skin and bones, most of the time, many people sort of coast through until they reach that level where it's an irreversible level. Now, of course, on the other hand, there is this situation of maximum obesity that we're always looking at, but everything else that comes before it, everything else miles ahead, falls in that extreme category as well. And I think it's about sort of balancing the equilibrium, if that makes sense, right? So thanks, everybody. I had a fantastic time. You guys have been a wonderful audience. One day when I can figure out what social media is and what the internet is, one day I shall find my way into a podcast and you can join me. Until then, I wish you good night. I send love to all of you. Little heart emojis. I would say WhatsApp me, but you don't have my number. So the old traditional way, email me, because you can't tag me in the internet universe. Thank you, guys. Thank you, friends. Thank you. And congratulations, dear them. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, doctor.
Thank you so much. We loved having you.
Bye, Dr. Bila.
Bye.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we're just going to be answering another 4 more questions. The next question we have is, in Asian culture, the beauty standards are so fat phobic. How would you suggest these barriers be broken? Would any of the panelists like to take this question?
Sorry, I actually wanted to add a bit for the question just now.
Okay,
If that's okay.
Yes.
This person, whoever sent in this question, clearly this person has repeatedly brought up skinny shaming and stuff like that. I just want to give you some small advice. Just don't talk about it with this person because it's pointless. They are clearly not interested in listening to your point of view. They're clearly not invested in understanding more, because there are many resources on the internet. If they want to learn more, they can. You can share with them links. If they want to learn more, they can. So I think you've done your very best, and I'm sorry that they are not engaging with you in a fair space or in a fair way. Yeah. So my advice is to just stop engaging with them on this topic. Save your energy. Okay. For the second question, I think the advice that we gave at the end, right, is really important. Those are some things that you can do to directly challenge fat phobic notions, right? I think it's also important to remind people from Asian culture that our standards of beauty are not white, right? We all have been colonized, and that is our standard of beauty, and that is our standard of goodness and, you know, perfectness and things like that. So how do we unpack or unlearn that this is our standard? Consume more things from your own culture, right? Appreciate your culture's beauty standards, right? Whatever they may be. Think about beauty my advice would be, think about beauty as, you know, something that is not universal. because what beauty is truly in the eye of the beholder, right? What you think is beautiful is important. What other people think is beautiful is not, right? Your standard is important. I say, if you can push it one step further, remove your sense of self and value from how much you need to conform to stereotypes of beauty. Just remove your sense of value from it. It's so hard, and it's a challenge for me till today, right? I have for the longest time wanted to cut my hair really short, and I still haven't done it because, my hair's so long and nice. So how, right? It's something I'm trying to challenge every day, and I'm trying to get there, right? So unlearn the standards of beauty, right? Make your own. Yeah. Anyone else?
Well noted,
I think I
𝗕𝗵𝗄.
want to add, oh, sorry. I want to add something, right? I want to add like this whole idea of beauty and like, yeah, why is this always like a currency that we use? Like, why is beauty so important? Like I realized that I also have played a part where I need to appear feminine, or I need to appear acceptable to other people, and I don't really need to do that. I can just exist as myself in whichever way I choose to exist in. And also, look at people who are different from you. Yes, consume your culture, but also look at like Black culture, look at like Asian, like, Hawaiian and indigenous cultures, because we've been constantly bombarded with the white beauty standard that anything other than white is not looked at as attractive, right? So look at all these cultures and yours as well to expand your view on what beauty is. And then the second thing is to even understand why, you don't have to pay the rent in being beautiful. Like, you don't have to be beautiful to exist in this world. You can just be whoever you are. But yeah, that's my 2 cents. I think Fariza wanted to say something.
I'm good. Thank you.
Well, 100% right now. Okay, so next question. So someone asked, what's the direction of this movement? Are you going to have more discussion or a forum one after another? I think this person's referring to the fat positivity movement and that we're talking about tonight. So anyone has a take on this?
Doreen, you want to go? Go for it.
Of course, we'd be very interested in participating in talks like this, because I think that people very rarely hear the lived realities of fat people from fat people themselves. And I think that is such an important thing to build empathy, right? To really understand where people are at and what's happening in their lives. I think a lot of people just have not considered that. I mean, I also want to talk about microaggressions, but yeah, I guess we'll keep that to another topic. And maybe it's something we can also put up in our Insta. But also with the Instagram platform, we are planning to give voice to a lot more fat voices and fat stories. So do follow us and stay tuned for all of that. So and you will definitely see more of us everywhere, hopefully. Once we can start talking about the conversation, I believe that so much will be revealed, and there'll be so many more people who have same experiences, who just have not had the space to talk. And honestly, I'd really like to hear from other fat people in this session itself. We would love to hear from you and your experiences. Maybe we can do that in the after party, but so we'll definitely see you all there. Anybody else want to add about where Malaysian Fat Squad is heading to?
No, Dorian, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. All right. In that case, I think we're going to wrap up with our last question of the night. That will be recorded at least. So the last question is, with the movement, I've noticed a debate going around the community as a group of individuals say that this movement encourages an unhealthy lifestyle, which I don't agree. How would you approach this?
I think I'm going to take this real quick because it
Okay.
sort of makes me rage when people make statements like this because, okay, so I just have to say that concern for fat people, you know, has been the mask for people's fat phobic behavior for years. You know, people do it all the time. Speaking from my own experience, the first company I worked in, I had a general manager who pulled me aside after working with him for almost 3 years to tell me that, hey, Prem, you know, when you first joined, you were fat, but you were not that fat. But right now you have gained some weight. So I think that you won't be able to carry out your job well. And, you know, I'm really concerned about your health and your knees. Is it going to be able to, you know, handle your weight and stuff like that? So and by him implying that I will not be able to do my job well, it automatically made me feel unsafe because I'm like, you know, are you trying to tell me if I don't lose weight, you're not going to basically let me work there anymore? And this was masked under concern for my health. And going back to the question, people say that this kind of movement says that what we are trying to spread the message that being unhealthy is okay. Where? Give me one little bit of black and white stating that we are saying that. Like Vila said earlier, we are not going around asking people to, you know, drink cups of grease or eat 20 burgers. It's not part of the message. And I think anyone who can read, basically, anyone who can read or listen or see what the message we are putting out there basically just says that love yourself. You know, you can't love, like Kira said, you can't love yourself out of fat phobia, but you can love yourself enough to basically share that message with other people, younger generation. I wish when I was 15 or 16, there were people like us who were standing up and talking about people like me. I wouldn't have gone through my whole teenage life half of the time in pain and embarrassed and bullied, you know, if there were people who were talking on behalf of me. So to these people who say that we are spreading messages of unhealthiness, I think the one thing you should say to them is basically have a conversation with us. We would like to understand why you are saying those things and basically tell us and we will tell you why that's not the case, basically. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I add something?
Yes.
So to those people who say that we promote obesity, you know, because whenever fat people post hot, amazing, fashionable pictures of ourselves, people are just so triggered and they say, like, you know, we promote obesity. I really wonder if you can point to me one person who have been encouraged to be fat because we promote obesity. Show me one person who have actually been fat or who actually wanted to be fat because there are fat people posting pictures of ourselves. There's none. No, nobody wants to be that. Do you know why? Because people know how shitty it is being a fat person. People do not want to be treated like how we are treated. People do not aim to be that way. So even if we are promoting obesity every single fucking day, no one's gonna, you know, just be flipped and say, oh my God, I want to be fat now. No fucking one. Because people know how bad they treat fat people. And no one's gonna, you know, just aspire to be someone that is being shat on every day. So, yeah.
Okay, I could not have said that better myself. Thank you so much, everyone. We have one of our audience members with their hands raised. Would you like to ask this panelist questions? Amirul Shah.
Hey, hi guys.
Hi.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. I'm on my phone anyway. So I just like to check, right? Earlier on, as I asked a question about what's the direction of this movement, and then Darren said more stories about fat people and their experiences, right? So in summary, can I say that is more awareness as of now? But I'm also thinking, right, more awareness. I mean, I'm just thinking of like, is there any, action that you guys are planning out of this conversation actually? So someone said earlier on, some fat people was even banned from the airlines, right? Are you expecting, so for example, about the clothes just now, you can't find clothes, so you have to go online, right? At now, at least what I know, there is some brand that offers physical, right, the offline store for plus sizes as well. So you can go online as well. I guess more choice. So you are you would suggest for the brands to include the plus size as well, right? Like for example, the airlines just now, someone said that fat people cannot even board the plane, right? And are you expecting the airlines to have like, I know, fat friendly plane or something? I'm just trying to understand what's the direction actually.
Maybe I can answer a bit lah. Okay. So I think for now, the space is going to be a space for learning about what fat phobia is. We will also be linking resources, hopefully, to fat-friendly health practitioners, mental health practitioners, basic space, maybe even clothes, who knows. It's still really new. We're still in the process of building the direction of this movement. I think advocacy is definitely one of our goals. I think we are more focused on the health aspect of the access to health aspect and access aspects of what fat phobia is. Sure, I think getting local brands to understand that size 20 is not plus size would be great. But I think that's quite low on our priority list lah. I think the direction, at least for us right now, would be access to these really, really important things that we need. Proper seating in hospitals, right? Any other issues that fat people face. I think there needs to be a space for fat people to come and be like, this has happened. This is an issue I'm facing. What can we do about it? Yeah, so far that's where we're at. Anybody else want to tambah? Or
Yeah, I
No, you
think
did
that
it well. Oh, sorry.
no, sorry, okay, very well. I mean, absolutely, like took all the words, but also, yeah, I definitely agree with Kireth, like in the sense that I think there's a lot already. I mean, not enough, but there's already a lot that's said about fatness in fashion, but not enough about every other parts of our lives that are so inherent to life, right? We're talking about the enjoyment of human rights, but how do we enjoy human rights when there's so much stigma and there's so much discrimination still out there that people don't even know about, right? I'm sure you've heard something today that you've probably never heard of before. And yeah, I think that's where Kireth was saying that, like, it's important for us to hear about fat lives first. And then advocacy can be done when, okay, there's different stakeholders, like they look at, the experiences and then they're moved to do something about it. We would love to work with them. I believe, and that is definitely the direction that we're heading into in the future, like, to actually move towards change. So, yeah.
Okay. We really need to kind of like wrap it up in a way. I'm so sorry. So we're just gonna quickly do like our closing thing, and then Christina will answer your question like in the after party. Okay. So to kind of wrap things up, am I going first? Sorry, I am. Okay. To kind of like sum up what we kind of discussed in general, I think it's really important to understand that anyone can have negative experiences or emotions about their body, but it's not necessarily the same thing or the same like systemic discrimination fat bodies face, and the feeling of like being constantly like left out or judged for your body size isn't the same. It's not the same as like not loving your skin or being uncomfortable in your body. They're both equally valid. That said, with that point in mind, it's not the same because the automatic respect for society gives thin bodies doesn't exist for fat people as well. So like, as also Keith mentioned, like, we can't just assume that we can make this change and acceptance just based on like self-love and like an individual pursuit. I think it's more of like, you essentially just going to set them up for failure. I think it's more of like, it has to be a collective cultural change, because one person alone can't be resilient against like social rejection, biased beliefs, limited practices, like the list can go on. So yeah, I think that's really what I wanted to kind of conclude and add everything in. I do think this session for me personally was something that I really needed in life at this point, but like, I feel like prior to this point, I think even saying the word fat for me was a bit like difficult, but I think I've said it a lot in this session alone, which I'm very proud of myself. So thank you so much for all the speakers and for giving us the space to kind of like create this event, which I really, really appreciate. Okay, on to Hessa now. Go.
Okay, Shiva, I just want to say that like exactly what you said, like all this time I've been sort of uncomfortable with using the word fat and just having that internalized things going on. And I don't know, I feel like this conversation was like very, I don't know, it was personal to me. Like it definitely struck a chord, and I'm so happy that we have this space to talk about these things. And okay, so with that, I want to thank you all so much for coming. And of course, thank you to our wonderful speakers for being here. Before I let everyone go, be sure to check out our socials. We have Instagram and Twitter. You can also join our Discord server. It is open to everyone. We have a feedback form, I think, that will be up in the chat sometime soon. And we really appreciate your thoughts on tonight's event. It'll really help us in sort of curating more events for y'all. And of course, if you haven't already, you can sign up to be a DFM Club member. And yeah, all right. Also, be sure to follow the Malaysian-based. They're up on Instagram now. Try to follow. Okay, and yeah, I think with that, we have officially come to an end of figuring out body figures. We will be having an after party session, which Shiva mentioned earlier, which will not be recorded. So it's super off the record. You can say anything. As if we haven't already been saying everything now. But yeah, so feel free to stay on. And if you have to leave, thank you once again for being here. And we will see you in the next one.